The following is a presentation of the ACME Writing Academy.
Okay, we're on the air. This is Rick Krisman welcoming you to the ACME Writing Academy's Department of Enthusiasm, where today our guest is fiction writer, essayist, memoirist, an all-around enthusiastic person, Ronit Plank.
Hi.
Hi, Ronit. Ronit, a native
Do you
of...
want me to wait until you finish my name to
No,
say hi?
I think you should just interrupt me at every opportunity.
That's what I'm used to. I interrupt you. I interrupt everyone.
But listen, let me just read a little bit of your bio, okay, so we know who everybody knows who we're dealing with here.
Yeah.
Ronit is a native New Yorker. I'm reading for your bio. And an award-winning and widely published author whose work has appeared in Brevity, the American Literary Review, the Iowa Review, Proximity, Salon, and elsewhere. She's currently revising. I'm talking about you like you're not here.
And you know what's funny is that I wrote that bio in the third person, which is kind of what we do. Although
Right.
some people, newfangled people, are doing it in the first person. But I want to just insert here that I did not call myself an award-winning or widely published. You did.
No, that's right. I added that.
In
all fairness, right?
Make sure people.
Okay,
I
maybe
did
I
not
should
say I'm an award. Well, you know what's funny, Rick, is when I wrote it, I was like, should I say I'm an award-winning? Because I've seen that written once or twice, or my friends will be like, "You're an award-winning, author," and I'm like, "Oh, cut it out."
Yeah,
whatever. Now I sound like I'm being completely humble braggy, and I don't mean that. But I just want to say I struggled with that for a moment, and then it ended up in your introduction. So now I'm like, wow. All right, I guess I wrote it.
Okay. Well, let's see. Well, thanks for coming, and that's a wrap, and we'll see you all next time.
Rick, this was so fun.
This was great,
The
Ronit.
time flew.
Your enthusiasm is contagious.
I know.
Okay.
You need to take a nap.
All right,
I
listen.
got it.
I'm switching to the dreaded second person. I like to write short stories
okay.
in second person, even though you're not supposed to.
I do too.
So here we go.
No.
Yeah,
go ahead.
No, you are revising your coming-of-age memoir and co-hosting the Mouthy, Messy, Mandatory podcast. Much of your work can be read online at www.ronitfineglassplank.com, which is spelled exactly the way it sounds. And,
What is that?
and I highly recommend going there because your stories are great. They really are. I've enjoyed.
Thank you.
You turned me onto the link, and I read a few more. I've read other things before, but I enjoyed it.
Thank you.
The one about Alaska with the guy takes his family up there, and they've got the wild dogs next door and everything. That is great.
House in the Woods.
House in the Woods,
House
right?
in the Woods,
Yeah.
which was in that was in American Literary Review not long ago.
Yeah. Okay, so
Yeah. Thank you.
We'll tell our listeners that you and I, of course, know each other from the MFA program at Pacific University, where you studied.
Go Pacific.
Go Boxers.
Go Pacific.
Where you studied nonfiction and I studied fiction, and now here we are both out in the world, where you seem to be a shooting star, right?
Oh, Rick.
You are. Come on, you're all over the place.
There I go.
Okay, look, let's get down. Let's find it. First of all, we're recording this a few days out after New Year's, so I got to say Happy New Year. And how was your holiday?
Happy New Year. It was great. And I usually, like some other adults I know, don't have big plans for New Year's, but my friend, a good friend of ours, invited me and my family over to her house, and we were able to go on the roof and watch fireworks with maybe like 4 other little families, and it was just perfect.
Now,
it was just one of those.
You have kids,
I have
right?
2 kids. Yep, I
How old
have
are
2
they?
kids, and my kids are 12 and a half and 10.
Oh, okay. And you also work, right?
Well, so I am a part-time teacher. I teach at our temple. I'm not a very religious Jew. I'm more of a cultural Jew, but I love teaching. And so I currently teach 3rd graders and I teach 9th graders. And I also have this podcast that I'm working on, Mouthy, Messy, Mandatory. And then I've been doing a little bit. Yeah. Thank you. I mean, I really love the fact that you listen to it and we're so enthusiastic about it. So thank you.
Well, and I've realized after getting out of school that enthusiasm is the name of the game. Trying to, they gave us the ball, but now we got to carry it.
Well, it's true. You can definitely get down in the muck and you can kind of wonder why you feel like there's no momentum. And I think that once you've been writing for a couple of years, even if you're not sending stuff out, you just get into this pattern and you realize it's, not any day is not going to make or break you. It's really the long game. I'm not an athlete or anything, but isn't that the right term? The long game?
It is the long game.
Yeah.
Absolutely. We know that. So you have to generate enthusiasm for yourself because you don't have 10 days of craft talks to amp you up. So
Yeah. And yeah.
So anyhow, that's what these interviews are all about. Just we're talking to various writers and other people in the arts about, the thing that it doesn't have to be anything to do with writing that gets you up in the morning and gets your crank turning. So the good news is today, if I understand correctly, we're going to be talking about food. And the less good news is that with one notable exception, it's going to be mostly about vegetables. Am I right?
Yeah. Well, you asked me to think about something I'm enthusiastic about. And, that's, for me, that was a lot of pressure because, of course, being the type A person I wanted to pick the exact right thing for your show. And what am I really enthusiastic about? And, should I do a pro and con list about the things I'm enthusiastic about? And then I realized, what I really want to talk about is how good I feel about the decision I recently made without getting on a soapbox, without being preachy, and then how it ties into the Donner Party, which I know is unexpected.
All right, you told me that you'd read a book when you were younger about the Donner Party, and that had a specific impact on you. And what was that?
Yeah, so here's the thing. Okay, so I became a vegetarian when I was 14 years old, purely for ethical reasons. I just always loved animals. My father raised me, and he was always very supportive of that and helped me understand how to care for animals. And when I was 14, I just realized, I'm going to be a vegetarian. I read a book that was a guide for teenagers, and I'd read all the statistics on the health issues associated with eating meat. And I became a vegetarian, and it was awesome. And I did it until I was 28 years old. Now, around the time I became a vegetarian, when I was 14, I found a book in the library where I spent most of my lunch hours at school because I had no friends.
Yeah, that's hard to imagine, but okay.
Well, we all have our awkward times.
Yeah, we do. I'm having mine now.
No. You're lovely, Rick. You cut that out now.
Okay.
Rick, I'm enthusiastic about you.
Oh.
Okay. So here's the thing. Like, we all go through times where we feel like we don't fit in. Like, I think everyone at some point, at least creative people, should go through a time when they didn't feel exactly right. Because it builds character and it helps you learn about yourself. Anyhow, I had moved to a new high school and I really didn't have friends and I was intimidated, and I would just take my little aluminum foil cheese sandwiches into the library and sneak little bites in the corner so I wouldn't get kicked out. And I didn't want to deal with the lunchroom. And I took out books and I would read them. And along with the vegetarian book I took out, I found a book on the Donner Party, the first time I ever heard about it. And I was captivated. And something about the cannibalism and the frozen bodies kind of just cemented my vegetarianism. So then I'm a vegetarian for 28 years. And then I meet my husband and I'm living in LA and I'm trying to get fitter. So I drop the carbs and the heavy vegetables and I become a meat eater again. And for all these years, I'm a meat eater. I just decide, okay, it's time, it's fine. But I couldn't be a vegetarian when my kid was small because the kid had a lot of special needs and I couldn't cut out any more kinds of food groups.
Right.
So I became a meat eater. I was like, I just don't have the bandwidth for this right now. I'm taking care of young children, etc. So then this past summer, and I'd been thinking about vegetarianism again and wondering why I hadn't done it, and always felt a little sheepish whenever, pardon the pun, but I always felt a little sheepish when people would order ribs or like they'd order like, pork belly. I'd be like, ugh. Like, I just couldn't think of the food I ate that way. I just had to kind of eat it. But like when people get all drooly about like barbecue and like, like the sumptuous parts of animals, I always cringed a little bit. Like I was one of those people who had to like burn my eggs, burn my meat, not think about the gooiness. So again, maybe too much information. Anyhow, so I read this book that came out recently, the newest book called The Best Land Under Heaven by Mike Wallace. And he wrote this giant book, this giant recreation. It's a nonfiction book about the Donner Reed Party. And I saw it and I thought, I heard about him on NPR. I heard him talk. And if you can find that episode, you should listen because his voice is very deep and resonant. And it was his,
oh, great.
Yeah, his voice struck me. I thought, who is this guy and what is he talking about? And I said, it's a donor party. So I got the book and I read the book and I was kind of thinking about being a vegetarian again. And after reading about the frozen bodies in the snow and the dogs that went into people's bellies and the people that went into people's bellies and how much I love my dogs and how long it had been since I'd been a vegetarian, I became a vegetarian again in June. Weird.
I'm just, you know what? I'm so happy you turned me on to that book because I've always been transfixed by the story of the Donner Party. And you've probably been up there too, up to Truckee and
I haven't yet. I never have.
Oh, it's a really interesting story how they got diverted further south from the Oregon Trail to, I guess, find an alleged shortcut to Sacramento.
Yes.
And yeah.
The author covers all of it. And it's like, I've never seen that area. I mean, I wasn't enough of a Donner Party, I don't know, fan is the word, aficionado, scholar to go to the places. And I grew up on the East Coast. I grew up in New York, and it was very foreign to me. The wilderness, pioneering, manifest destiny, which is what the author talks a lot about in this book. That was very unrelatable to me growing up in Queens. The
manifest destiny.
Well, we learned, the manifest destiny, but I mean, the wagon trains, and all I knew about that was from Little House on the Prairie, which I loved.
Right.
And like sometimes I'm going to let you in on a little flashback. Me and my sister, I'd put on like a long prairie skirt, and my dad had built us this little clubhouse out of like old wood in our apartment. And he hung a little, are you following me? So we have this. Okay. Okay. So my dad was handy, and he built us this little, wooden little clubhouse in our bedroom that had a little curtain. And I put on my prairie skirt and I popped some popcorn like Pa and Ma did on Little House on the Prairie. And I would take some cotton and I'd comb it between two brushes and say I was going to darn some socks. That was my idea of fun. So I guess I do have I have sort of a prairie fascination, but oh my gosh, I'm just going on and on. But the point is, I've never been
Okay, listen, I want to go back to where you're talking about the kind of how gross it was, the idea of cannibalism and how that might put you off meat. And I was looking through the book, and here's a little passage.
Oh, look at you.
So check this out. All I could, he quotes from different people's letters and so forth.
Yes,
right?
It's amazing.
So I'm not quite sure who I'm quoting from, but it was probably, he says, all I could see was snow everywhere. I shouted at the top of my voice. Suddenly, here and there all about me, heads popped up through the snow. The scene not unlike what one might imagine at the resurrection, when people rise up out of the earth. And then he's talking about how the rescuers describe scenes that transfix the country. Children sitting upon a log with their faces stained with blood, devouring the half-roasted liver and heart of the father, while around the fire were hair, bones, skulls, and fragments of half-consumed limbs. Okay, you know what? Vegetables it is.
No, I'm serious. And that's toward the very end of the book. And I do want to say, if this subject is at all interesting to you, I highly recommend the book because it's historical and it's very evocative, and he has a lot of fact-based. I mean, he really did his research. It's quite a thing.
It's next on my list.
Yeah, it's really good.
This looks like super interesting.
It's difficult. I mean, it's kind of this, there was an exhibit in Seattle not long ago that may have toured the country. Actually, it was called Can't Look Away. And it was something about why we can't stop looking at gruesome or horrible things. And there are things, I have my limits to what upsets, I have my limits. I can't take all kinds of shocking phenomenon, but there are certain things that I don't mind exposing myself to because they make me think. And this didn't bother me in a way that I had to look away, shut the book, and not think about it. It made me think in more of a philosophical way and a personal way. And obviously it affected me because I started to think, and I'm not soapboxing. I'm not like some vegan militant person. I'm still eating fish right now. But I think that when you really give some thought as to what it is that you're putting into your body, how we're connected, what what makes something okay to eat and what makes something not okay to eat. And I will say that even when I was a vegetarian, if someone said, or even when I ate meat, when someone said, oh, I can't eat lamb because they're too cute, or how can you eat that kind of animal? I just really never judged, because in my book, if you're eating one kind of living creature, you're eating another. So who am I? I mean, how you say a lamb is so cute? Well, I think lots of things are cute. That was a very gory passage that you just read, and it's not
Yeah.
all like that. But that's one of the almost culminating scenes, if I remember. And I guess I feel good about this decision because I'm not walking around dragging my feet like, oh no, I have to have no meat today. It just felt
Well,
really good.
so do you cook?
That's another story. I am a very infrequent cooker, in part because I'm lazy, I'll just say that. And because also my family is extremely picky. One doesn't eat
Ah.
leftovers, one doesn't eat spicy food, one doesn't like meat, one doesn't like pasta. I mean, we're only talking about 3 other people, but they're so complicated.
It seems like if you're going to be a vegetarian, you almost have to cook for yourself.
Yeah, and here's the thing. Any day of the week, it's easier for me to cook something vegetarian than meat, because partially, even though I cooked meat for my family growing up because I was the cook at a young age, I don't really get it. I burn it. I don't really understand it. It's just never been something that I really enjoyed. So
So here
yeah.
I had a note on my here, item number 7 to discuss was get a good recipe from Ronit.
Ooh.
But I guess that's not going to happen.
Oh, you don't have. Oh, I thought you were going to give me a recipe.
Okay, I'll give you one. I'll give
You
you
wanted
one.
one for me?
First of all,
Wait, one
I
second.
guess
Like,
I,
you would just have to
I
talk to
get.
my kids and my husband. Like, my daughter came in the other day and I was in the kitchen and she walked in and she's like, oh no, what are you cooking? Yeah.
First, I know Ronit's green beans. First, you get the can opener.
Well,
No, I'll tell you what.
yeah.
I have to confess, I am an inveterate barbecuer
Mm-hmm.
and meat-aholic.
Mm-hmm.
And steak night is a weekly big event at our house. And
Mm.
but one of the best things I like is I'll get zucchini, peel it and split it lengthwise.
Mm-hmm.
Red bell pepper,
Yeah.
split, opened up and flattened. Sliced onion and mushroom caps, and I'll put them on a thing and cover them with olive oil, salt, and pepper.
Yeah.
Put them on a hot grill for about 15 minutes,
So
and it's the best
they
thing
don't
ever.
they don't overcook in the 15 minutes. Do you turn them around at all?
I turn them
Yeah.
once.
I bet you
Yeah.
Mike
So there, try.
Magnuson is like, he's all over this too. I bet you he's a big griller also, right?
Oh yeah, yeah. We were at his place last summer, and we grilled pork butt and all kinds of stuff.
But this is what I mean. Like, it's so funny when people like put a pork butt up on their counter. They're like, massage the meat. It's just so weird. No? Think about it.
Well, you're putting the rub in,
Or like,
and actually,
yeah.
it's not a pork butt is actually the front shoulder of a
Well,
pig.
that
So
that
it's
makes
not
everything
really a butt,
different
but
then.
yeah,
I'm
exactly.
gonna
Right.
massage it on the shoulder like you would someone you loved. Um, or like, oh, I'm gonna
So
have a rib. Like, would I go up to you and eat your rib? No.
well, if you were in the Donner Party,
Yeah,
you
I
would.
would. Yeah.
Just to swing us back to the topic at
Yeah.
hand.
Depending on how
You know,
lucky
you
we were.
know,
Yeah, go on.
yeah, you mentioned Manifest Destiny, and that being that sort of sense in the 19th century that it was our divine right to take over the country, right?
Yeah.
Our divine providence
Mm-hmm.
requires us to
Take all.
take everything
Yeah.
to take all.
The white man.
And I think one of the points that Wallace is making in his book is how this is the tragedy, the Donner tragedy, was a refutation of the idea that providence is there to
Ah.
ensure that we get everything.
Yeah, the manifest destiny part is so timely and a really nice aspect to spend some time thinking about conquering the land, and if you could get there, if you could grab it, it was yours. The
Okay.
idea of taking over a place, of taming nature, of taming animals, of harnessing up animals, all of it kind of plays into, if you want, the umbrella of manifest destiny. What belongs to people and what can they take?
And I think this swings right back around to your thing about animals.
Exactly. And I understand the idea that if something is living in the wild or if it's part of the cycle of life and the food chain and is taken as needed. I understand that. That makes sense to me. But do I want to be part of, and again, I'm not a very political person. I don't think I am anyway. Do I want to be part of an organization or any kind of institution that sets something up for failure and exploits it the way that they see fit? Like, that's hard for me.
What would be an example of that?
I'm talking about factory farming. I'm talking about,
right.
I mean, I'm specific, for me, it was so obvious. I guess I should have mentioned that. I'm talking about, the idea that you can take anything you want and use it, that it's there at your disposal. And I also...
But you're entitled to it somehow.
Yes.
You're entitled by divine providence.
Yes. I mean, and I also...
And tell me that isn't present in our culture now.
It's totally present, because I was just talking to someone...
It's part of our DNA.
Just talking about in Washington State here. I mean, there are so many people whose ancestors lived on this land, and they're disenfranchised now, and they have very few resources. And I'm talking about in the time of and before Chief South. And I don't know. I think a lot.
I'm sorry, you broke up. The time before what?
Chief Seattle, Chief South. I just think people who were the tribal people here. It's just an exact example of what we're talking about. And I've grown a little more aware of things as I got older. I think it's important. I actually think I have a new quest/theory in my life, which is I think we should be less judgmental and more aware as we get older. Not, we should be less judgmental and more aware as we get older, not more closed off and more judgmental as we grow older.
Well, I couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
I think that's the key. And you know what? I feel like being a writer or pursuing being a writer puts you in that ballpark where you're taught, well, at least in fiction, you're taught not to be judgmental. Do not judge your characters.
Right. Well, because the reader can feel it. Readers and writers who are listening can certainly understand that. You can tell when a writer is hurting their character on purpose or judging their character on purpose, not for just sort of the plot. I think that's the same for me in what I learned with writing memoir, and I'm still working on it, but not to point fingers at the people in your book, not to not to have a lot of self-pity in there or play the victim. I think part of the reason a memoir can be gripping is because the person doing the reflecting and the recounting of the story is looking back at themselves in the time period that the memoir took place and commenting and figuring out why they behaved the way they did. And if someone did treat them in a way that they didn't appreciate, why did they react to it the way they did, even if that means that they didn't fight back. It's not about vilifying someone.
Right. So I love how, in the best literature, the bad guys are somehow oddly sympathetic.
Well, I think that's because that is the best literature. I feel very strongly as someone who thought in extremes and black and white for so long, and I have to train myself not to do it. I think so many people are combinations, and I really do believe that's part of the reason. Well, two things. Let me bookmark this. Everyone is more than one thing, and everyone is complex. That's why the best villains in literature and in cinema are the ones who are conflicted. Everyone's conflicted. Yes. And this can also lead back to the Donna Reed party, because here were these people trying to start a new life and were extremely conflicted because many of the people, especially the women, had a great amount of family back in their roots, back in the states where they originated. And they had to leave all of that to follow a dream that they hoped would pan out. And it was faith, hope, and reliance on their husbands to secure the resources and get them there safely. And the husbands probably had the best intentions, but they made mistakes too. And some of them, there was a lot of infighting. But they're captivating characters.
Should have stayed on the Oregon Trail.
For reals. Well, that's an interesting character, too. I forgot what his name is. I'm a little embarrassed. I can't come up with his name. But there was this guy, maybe we can insert it later, this guy who was telling everyone to go on the shortcut. It's famous.
Right. Right. It's not Sutter, is it? Or Sutter,
yeah, I think that's right. They were trying to promote a shortcut because who wouldn't want to save resources and get there faster? It was a little bit of a risk, but a risk they felt they could take. But then everything confounded them from the moment they started that shortcut. including the weather.
They got in. They got in a little late.
Yes.
October. They got early snows, and
So what's your thoughts on why people are captivated by the Donner Party story?
Hey, wait a minute. I'm asking the
but
questions
don't you
here.
wouldn't you like to answer that one?
Why? I mean, I think just the hideous idea of eating another person is what,
The spectacle.
it's like the spectacle. You cannot look away.
Right.
And how that implies how horrifying the conditions must have been to lead otherwise good, God-fearing people to behave like that.
That's right. And also that reminds me about the other part of it is how much they lost their humanity. And did the people who ate other people actually lose their humanity or do what most people would do to survive? And what's the scale of humanity? Because some people ate when their mother, for example, made them eat something so they would survive. And other people kind of killed in excess toward the end and were basically feasting on people and hoping they would die. So there is a scale of brutality there. Wow, I can't believe I made you talk about this. Are you feeling down?
Well, it's I wouldn't call it enthusiasm. Although, here's a question. I say that enthusiasm can also apply to negative things.
Okay.
People can do evil in an enthusiasm. They're enthused about the evil that they do.
So can you give me? Yes, I'm
energized.
Abstractly,
believe in what they're doing.
Yes, abstractly, I'm with you 100%. And can you give me an example because that helps me?
I'm just talking about how to use the word
enthusiasm.
Yeah. Okay. Let's say you're an arsonist.
Oh my. Mm-hmm.
You're enthused about starting fires.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That's a correct use of the word, isn't it?
Sure. Yes.
Okay.
That's fine.
So we have an enthusiastic feeling about the Donner Party and the whole story. So, so what a bummer.
It is. Well, but I do think, my sister told me this a long time ago, and I don't know where she read it. And you may have heard this too, but the Grimm's fairy tales? I grew up on the Grimm's fairy tales. Okay.
Mm-hmm. I've got
them.
Yeah.
So apparently there was an experiment, and I want to say it was in Europe, but this is one of those extremely vague stories that you'll just have to, cut me some slack on. They cut out all of these fairy tales from kids, curriculum, or they weren't letting kids read them because they thought they were too disturbing because so many of them were kind of brutal. Hansel and Gretel.
Before they get Disneyfied.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. The original ones are pretty harsh. So I guess my sister told me that the people found that teachers, parents found that when the Grimm's fairy tales were removed from the kids, they didn't have access to them, their nightmares started to increase.
Whoa, interesting.
And I believe that this is true because I think that there's something about acting out or witnessing the dark stuff, the bad stuff that helps us work out what we feel about things and maybe, opens us up to the light, maybe.
Maybe it purges your subconscious.
Yeah, maybe it does. And maybe there's a part of me that wants to see how bad can things get, and then how good do I feel that they're not that bad. And
this is kind of a spin around, but I want to go back to what you were talking about with Wallace's book.
Yeah.
And how he takes you right up to the edge, but he doesn't, he stops short of grossing you out or sensationalizing.
Right.
Or which would be an example of sentimentality, right?
Right.
Sentimentalizing the whole story.
Yes.
And that's good, because you don't want to lose your reader. You don't want to describe the rape scene in too much detail.
Yeah.
Because people put the book down.
Exactly. And you're totally right. He does not sensationalize this. Now, the gross out part, I can't speak to that because we all have our different thresholds. But I will say that I feel that his audience, when he was writing this book, whether consciously or unconsciously, he must have thought either he's super smart and can't help but do it, or he thought I'm writing for the smartest reader who wants a true I was going to say well fleshed out story. I can't help it. Let's try.
I know, right?
How many puns can we come up with? Anyway, who likes a well fleshed out story with historical, background in it,
and good bones.
The story has to have good bones. Wah, wah, wah. That was a great one. I like that one the best.
There you go.
No,
okay.
I definitely, I think so, and I think the sentimentality thing. I forgot. We've both studied and listened to lectures at Pacific about sentimentality, although I'm having a hard time coming up with a good example right now of what that could be like.
Well, let me refer you to a Acme Writing Academy podcast.
Ooh, yeah.
Sentimentality.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's been posted at this point or not. We're just recording now, and we're actually dropping this thing in about 5 days.
Can't wait.
So yeah, I'm nervous.
Oh, it's going to be so good. You guys are a great group.
You know what? We're running out of time, and we could sit here and yak forever, couldn't we?
We sure could. And Rick, I'm just saying that if you ever need me to guest again, I would love to. And I promise not to talk about cannibalism.
Well, what can I say? If you're enthused about cannibalism, who am I to object? Right?
Yeah.
Anyhow, I think we're going to have to wrap it up. And I want to remind everybody that they're listening to Ronit Plank. Do you use all three names as your writer name?
I do. In this podcast
fine.
I was doing with my friend, I said, I'm just going to say Ronit Plank. And she said, oh, come on. Ronit Plank is totally how I think of you. So I'm keeping it.
That's great. That's a great name. I think you should keep it.
It's terrible. Thank you.
Anyhow, and another reminder that you have your own podcast. Tell me the name again.
It's called Mouthy, Messy, Mandatory. And you can hear it wherever you listen to podcasts, especially it's on iTunes. So.
Okay. Well, here comes the theme music. So I want to thank you, Ronit, for sitting in today and talking about all of this. And we hope we can have you back.
Thanks for having me.
Okay. This is Rick Krisman thanking you, the listener, for eavesdropping and wishing you a pleasant rest of your day and happy writing.